Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Disney and Pixar film Coco. Coco is a film that is using the setting of Day of the Dead. For those of you who don't know what Day of the Dead is, it's kind of the Mexico version of Halloween. And for their culture, it's more so about leaving out pictures and popular dishes amongst those that you've lost in your family. It's a way for, in their culture anyway, where the spirits of the dead can kind of come back to life for one night and kind of walk around their houses that they used to live in, see what their current family looks like, see what their great great grandchildren look like, depending on how long they've been dead and so forth. So that's kind of what Day of the Dead, like the very simplified version of, is about. And this Disney Pixar film uses that Day of the Dead setting very heavily in this new Coco film. But in this movie, you guys, it's about a young boy named Miguel, and he has a huge passion for music. He loves playing the guitar, and his family has kind of banned music. They don't want him to participate in it. They don't want him to perform music. They had this family tragedy a long time ago where someone in their family went off to become a very famous musician, kind of left the family behind, didn't give him any money of any kind, didn't let them tour with him. He just kind of left his family in the dust once he became famous for his music. So the family kind of abandoned music. They didn't participate in music anymore. Once this person was dead, they kind of left it be, and anybody and future generations like this young Miguel boy, they're trying to discourage him in any way they can to make sure that he doesn't want to get involved in music. So Miguel obviously ignores them. He kind of performs music in private. He's trying to land gigs where he can perform music in front of people and so forth. But Miguel's big break comes when he finds out that this very famous musician that he think he might be related to has his signature guitar on display near a graveyard somewhere. And he finds out, and this isn't a spoiler, it's literally in the trailer for this movie, that stroking this guitar in a certain way can bring you from the land of the living to the land of the dead. So you can temporarily become a part of the land of the dead and walk around in it. And whether it is Day of the Dead or not, you'll be able to cross over and see the people who live in Land of the Dead, and see kind of what's going on in reality and so forth. So he has this unique way of transporting himself to the land of the dead. And while he's there, he's trying to figure out, who exactly this musician was that kind of betrayed his family a long time ago. He has to figure out who that is. He thinks that this really popular musician, who is a huge part of Land of the Dead now, since he's now dead, might know a lot of answers about this and so forth. So this movie's all about Miguel learning about his family history, learning why his family really truly hates music and why they really don't want him to be a part of it, while also learning about family values, learning about what's right, while also learning a lot about himself. So Coco is about all of these things. So overall, guys, I liked Coco. It's not a Pixar film that I absolutely love. I think they've certainly made better films in the past, but I really enjoyed Coco for the most part. Sorry about that. I don't know what that was on my lip there a second ago. Sorry about that for anybody I might have grossed out a second ago. But anyway, I like the movie. I think Pixar has truly made better films than this one. I also think they made worse films than Coco. I think films like Cars 2, The Good Dinosaur, Brave, for example, too. All those films I think are way weaker than Coco. Even though Coco I would never put in the same league as like Toy Story 1, Toy Story 3, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Inside Out, The Incredibles. I would never put Coco in that kind of league at all. But I do really enjoy this film a lot. So let's go over some positives and negatives as to why I enjoy Coco, but it's not quite like top caliber Pixar film for me. First and foremost, and like a lot of Pixar films, Coco is very visually beautiful. They definitely have a very good understanding of what Day of the Dead is, what the visuals are for Day of the Dead. I really liked both the reality visuals and the Land of the Dead visuals that they used for this. So Pixar did a beautiful job. Apparently, when he's in the Land of the Dead and he sees all these cities and homes, apparently it took Pixar like 8 million light sources to get that right or something like that. So just something absolutely absurd. And so Pixar has ways of just really working their employees to death in the right ways. Obviously, they're making incredible films to really make sure that everything is perfected in their films. So huge thumbs up to Pixar once again. I'm sure they worked their employees to death to make this film happen, but they made a very visually beautiful film that's very nice to look at. Coco also has great messages on family values and following your dreams. There's a lot of moments and themes in this movie where family values should come first. You know, the things that your family wants you to value and appreciate the most. Sometimes those things have to come first to really get yourself happy in life and to make the people around you happy. But there's other times too where it is important to follow your dreams. There is going to be times where probably following your dreams requires you to do things that maybe your family doesn't 100% approve of, but maybe later on down the road, when they see you happy with what you know what you have and what you want to do with your life, the family values kind of work their way back into that too. So the film's all about how family values, they're important, they should work their way into other things, but at the same time though it's also important to follow your dreams. Make sure that you still have family values and that you're close with your family, but follow your dreams the best you can. Sometimes there's going to be things you're going to have to do to not, to not make every member of your family happy to follow those dreams. But Coco does make the point that keeping both of those things is important, and sometimes it's very important to make sure to separate the two when handling certain things. There's also for those who don't know what this is, like it's called a doily, and they use it for like plants and decorating like a table in a home and stuff like that. Um, there's a scene near the beginning where all these doilies are laying out to dry at this home somewhere in Mexico, and they use it for the opening credits to explain kind of this musician that abandoned the family and stuff like that. They're trying to go over that story. So by the time Miguel goes over that with somebody else, you're kind of more familiar with it because they introduced that idea to you very early on in the movie. And they use these doilies for the opening scene. They use a very different kind of animation that's not used for the rest of the movie. And I really liked that Pixar did that. In a way, I was hoping they were going to do more unique animation moments like that because I really liked that. I really liked how they used like this 2D doily animation to explain this the musician and the family's past and so forth. Really cool opening scene for a movie. And unfortunately, they never go back to it, and they never make those kind of risks later on in the movie. But the opening scene, that the way that they handled that visuals, I thought was really really cool. So huge thumbs up to Pixar for making a really cool opening scene using a really unique visual style. The film also displays the values of Day of the Dead, why it's important to lay out your photo for the Day of the Dead and stuff like that, why it's important to lay out your family members' favorite meals, why it's important to remember your family members and have stories about them and have memories to tell people while they're gone. So the movie does reinforce that, sometimes you have to do these things because you don't know what's really going on in the afterlife for some of these characters. And if you don't remember them and if people choose not to remember them, they're not going to have a great time in the afterlife. So there's a lot of scenes in this movie that show off that if you choose to forget about some of these family members, their time in the afterlife is not going to be very pleasant at all. The film also shows kind of the goods of the afterlife. There's one moment I can't get into detail on because it is kind of spoiler territory, but the best way I could say it without spoiling anything is there's a character where you really want this character to be very happy by the end of the movie, and there's not a lot this character can do at one point in the movie, but they can explain stuff to this character, they can show stuff, they can play music for this character, and so forth. Um, the film, I thought there's a scene regarding this character. Once again, I can't spoil it, um, but it shows kind of the goods of the afterlife. That if you put them in a good place, if you make their life happy, if you're doing all the right things, if you're showing them that the people and the things and the memories they choose to keep are all good things, and that they live their life to the best possible way that they can. There is a lot of good things in the afterlife, and they kind of enter the afterlife with all those good things, and they're off to like a good path with their soul for eternity. So I liked how Coco kind of touched on that a little bit. It's so for those who get really emotional or worry about losing a family member and so forth, but that they're kind of in a good place with everybody and they have good memories to go with when they eventually kick the bucket and so forth. The film definitely shows off having those good things while entering the afterlife is very good for the soul for somebody. The film also has great music. It kind of has to, though, because there is so much music in the movie and characters that play music in the movie. So thankfully, Pixar did a good job with the musical score in this movie. There's a strong chance that the song Remember Me, which is strongly featured in this movie, might get nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars. And I totally agree if they want to go that way because it is a really nice song. And it feels like it's a song that's been around for a while, which is kind of a neat feeling that they managed to have with it. So, really good music in this movie. Was really happy with it. For my negatives of Coco, though, and why I don't think it's the best Pixar film, The Land of the Dead isn't as immersive as I was hoping it was going to be. There's a lot of rules I feel that get broken with it, and there's just a lot of explanation I think this land needed to really feel as immersive as, let's say, like a Toy Story or the land where the monsters live in Monsters Inc. and so forth. I don't think The Land of the Dead is as immersive as some of those other Pixar film lands are. There's also a lot of inconsistent rules with how the dead works, and how like people can die in the land of the dead and all this kind of stuff. It's really inconsistent with those rules, and it really gets sloppy towards the end of the film. So as far as that is concerned, I wasn't too impressed with how Pixar handled that. The film also takes a while to start. I would say it really doesn't get going until Miguel enters the land of the dead, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I like the stuff that they show before. I definitely love the doily opening that they used in this movie with all the visuals and stuff they used for it. But it just takes a long time to get going, unfortunately, so it's not the most well paced Pixar film. There's also some sloppy character resolutions in this film. Certain characters just really don't get their resolutions the way that they should in this movie to make it fully work that it can. So I wasn't too impressed with some of the resolutions in the movie. There's also some pointless characters that Miguel meets for his relatives while in the land of the dead. Without getting too much spoilers, there's these twin uncles that he has. They're literally just there to help remind him that the pictures that he has back home are definitely the same people here, even though they're in skeleton form. So literally, they're just there for one visual cue at one point in the movie. And other than that, these two characters really don't do anything else in this movie. And there's more characters than just them, but I'm just using that as an example of characters that are there to be the relatives of this boy, but they don't really do a lot in this movie. Another note too about this movie is it's not very funny, and unfortunately on IMDb, one of the genres that this film was listed as is a comedy. Definitely more so a fantasy for me. I think it's a comedy fantasy. I definitely view this film more so as a fantasy. I think it works better as a fantasy too. And I think hopefully Pixar agrees with that. But whenever it does try to do some jokes in this movie, they just really don't land for me. So humor wise, wasn't too impressed with it. I really didn't laugh that much in this movie. And then on a side note too, before Coco begins, there's a short film about Olaf from the Frozen movies, or Frozen and soon to be Frozen 2, I guess. It's very long. I really think it's one of Disney's weaker short films they've done before, one of their feature films. I would say either cut 10 minutes out of what they made or just do a completely different Olaf short. I was really not impressed with what they did. I felt like they tried to do like musical numbers and all this stupid stuff within a 20-minute range, and it just really didn't work. It felt really sloppy as a result. Really was not impressed with the Olaf short that they showed before Coco. But overall, I'm going to give Coco an 8 out of 10. I think it's a good film. Once again, not Pixar's best. Definitely not the 97% you heard about this movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Unfortunately, I think it is a good film, though. It's just not one of Pixar. It's not one of their best films, but it's not one of their worst films.